Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Puri, Professor Gurmukh Singh, Professor Dharamjit, thank you very much for your invitation to do a second memorial lecture for Darshan Singh Tatla. It's a real honor and pleasure. I have a long connection with Punjabi University, and I will definitely take up the Vice Chancellor's suggestion. Perhaps deliver another lecture in person, maybe at the Center for Diaspora Studies in the future. So that's a definite yes, guarantee. If I hope it'll happen soon. Just a word about. I mean, I would love to give a lecture at Punjabi University in Punjabi. Okay, I know the mission statement of the university, and I was just thinking today. It was April 1963. Sorry, August 1963 that I left Punjab as a child. Okay, that's 60 years ago. 60 years ago, and I have been living outside in the UK now, partly in the USA for that period of time. But I feel, that my conversational Punjabi is fine. I can communicate with people at a personal level. That is not a problem. But my vocabulary is very limited, especially when it comes to technical terms. So, it'll be nerve-wracking for me to try to even try to deliver a lecture in Punjabi. But I'm really sorry about that. But I do, I do regret that. But at the same time, I feel blessed that even after 60 years of living outside Punjab, that I can still speak Punjabi. I can write Punjabi, so that's okay. I feel okay about that. So with that note in mind, let me just share my screen because I want to go on to talk about Darshan for a few minutes. I'm, as I said, I'm really honored to be talking about Darshan. Darshan was a sort of very dear friend of mine, and we were together for 40 odd years. I met him 1980, 81, before he lived in London. So, and we share similar research interests, similar ideas, similar views, outlook, values. So, friendships don't last that long unless you have that shared views, outlook on life. So even a few years before he passed away, he lived in Punjab. I was in California, and we used to, when he visited England in the summer months as well. So we used to get together at Birmingham University, Birmingham Library. I used to go to his house. We used to meet at least once or twice during that period. So long period of friendship. Now, as Dr. Gurmukh has said, he's extremely dedicated to research on Punjab. He never hesitated, always promoted Punjab studies. That was his life. Research was basically his life, and extremely humble person, very generous person. I must admit, he gave his time, he gave his resources, and I would actually say to him, actually, you are actually some of these people are actually taking advantage of your generosity. They're writing books, they're writing articles, but you don't get a mention in it. Why isn't your contribution to that actual publication encountered? He wasn't bothered about that. So that was just part of his character. So a lot of publications, he would be the main researcher, or he would be the person who initiated the research but didn't get a mention. So extremely generous in that sense, and also in other ways. Now, said I met him in 1980, but soon after, we started the Punjab Research Group in 1984, and it sort of gathered pace. So more and more scholars. That was the idea, to encourage young scholars to start work in Punjab. We expanded. We started a newsletter. I still have copies of Punjab Research Group newsletters. And there are about 9, 10 of them. The last one was in 1996. He also, during this period, published a sort of directory of Punjab scholars, that were actually working, had research interest in Punjab, and also, interestingly, he was so keen that he published these 2 booklets, theses on Punjab. So these are theses on Punjab, is a whole, full bibliographical details of the theses that had been submitted to universities of North America, to universities of Europe, Russia, and the Far East from 1990 to 1995. Okay, these 2 volumes. So just amazing. This was just his interest in terms of making sure there is more and more interest in the research on Punjab. So he published, obviously over his lifetime, he published made many publications. He has bibliography on Sikhs in the UK, Sikhs and Punjab, the whole bibliography on Punjab, published by an American publisher, and many journal articles. He sort of set up the Center for Migration Studies, and there he introduced the Punjab Diaspora series, which were biographies of pioneering diaspora Punjabis. So a lot of commitment. So that's why I would call him an institution builder, because these things were very important in really setting the scene for promotion of Punjab studies. So his academic work has been sort of really wide-ranging. His primary interest was in homeland politics. He wrote on Sikhs in Britain. He then also wrote on with Van on a philanthropy in Punjab. He was an academic mentor. He had many PhD students, for example, researchers would contact him, email him, and he gave them time. He would reply to them, very generous with his time. So he was a mentor to many students, researchers, and but I also like Amta Sen has said, has a book on the argumentative Indian. I would say Darshan also would be in that category. He's a sort of argumentative Punjabi. So yes, he had his strong views on various things. He was not prepared to put his side of put his point of view. So he did have interaction with academics in Punjab and also in the diaspora, where he differed in terms of his approach, his understanding of history, and others. So these are just personal things, which and I did write a lengthy sort of obituary of him in the Journal of Punjab and Sikh and Punjab Studies in 2001 after his passing. So I would say, if I was to sort of answer the question on what do you think is Darshan Tatla's main contribution to Sikh and Punjab studies, I would say 2 contributions of different nature. I would sort of highlight his book, The Sikh Diaspora, Search for Statehood. Okay. Now, this is not a book really about the Sikh diaspora. Okay. It doesn't tell you too much about the formation of the Sikh diaspora, the migration processes over centuries, but it's the second part the search for statehood, which is the dominant contribution, I would think. So it's one of the first studies which actually, breaks new ground in terms of looking at an area, how diasporas keep an interest in homeland politics. So it's the first study going into such detail. It's an area that was really not researched in diaspora studies at that time. So that's a major contribution. More than that, I think it's a brilliant empirical study because in that book, he takes the case of the US, the UK, and Canada. He looks at actually the Khalistan movement, how the Khalistan movement, how it was being, the movements, the supporters mobilized, the various discussions that were going on in the vernacular press, okay, the vernacular newspapers at that time mainly. And he interviewed leading actors. He interviewed the editors of Indo-Canadian Times. He also interviewed the editor of Desh Pradesh, and lots of nationalist leaders, okay, at that time, Khalistanis, who were seen as the leaders. And that's a really remarkable kind of work. And it's that kind of rich empirical work is unparalleled. I don't think I have seen another work on Punjabi diaspora which uses the kind of sources that he did, and it's a example to sort of younger scholars on how to do empirical research. I read a book recently, a new book on Sikh nationalism, and in that book, there is not a single interview with actually a Sikh nationalist. So, it just shows you how the thinking of Darshan was a lot more sort of visionary than compared with even today. So that's the first one. And the second one, which I'm sure Professor Puri would be very interested in, is his giving us a better understanding, if you like, of extending our understanding of the Ghadar Party movement. He focused on the one incident, Komagata Maru incident. He sort of tried to put into public various documents which were not easily accessible. And he also wanted to extend the work that had been done earlier by Hugh Johnston on Komagata Maru. He sort of wanted to look more at Gurdeep Singh and the nature of the movement. He provided profile of various Ghadarites. I'm sure Professor Puri would agree with me that to him, what he was doing was providing a new narrative. Okay, there's lots of work on the Ghadarites. Professor Puri is the pioneer on looking at this, but he didn't see the Ghadar movement as part of the Indian national movement. He didn't really necessarily want to see it as a Punjabi movement. He argued that it's the first Sikh movement because it connected him to the work that he had done earlier for his PhD thesis on the Khalistan movement. So to him, that was just an extension. It was a historical sort of case study of Sikh militancy, kind of Sikh agitation that had been happening in earlier times too. So that I think that kind of narrative, controversial, but I think is also provides a sort of plurality in our thinking about the Ghadar Party. And of course, he's made other contributions as well, which we don't have time to go here. Look at here, but I'm sure we will do it in future lectures. Okay, so let me now go on to what I want to say today in terms of the title of my talk, which is Migration and Diasporas to Transnationalism, looking at the transition of these three concepts: studies of migration, studies of diasporas, and now moving on to studies of transnationalism, and how our thinking about these has been changing in terms when we look at Punjabi communities. It also reflects my journey. So in a way, my research, my publications also reflect that kind of shift, if you like, in how I look at the issue. So just a background. I think Professor Gurmukh Singh has already given my background, but just to reiterate that although I taught economics for most of my life, I never actually did any research in economics. All my research is on Punjab. It's on Sikh and Punjab studies. So there's some kind of dichotomy here in terms of what I taught, what I did for my living, but also what I was interested in personally. So recently, I wrote I edited this book, the Agrarian Reform and Farmer Resistance in Punjab. And in that book, I have a chapter which is looking at really trying to understand the mindset of Punjabis in terms of why are they supporting the Morcha. I thought about it a lot, talked to a lot of people in the diaspora. So I have this chapter, Mera Pind, Mera Sabhyachar, Mera Virsa, Understanding Diaspora Support for Punjab Kisan Morcha, trying to get at the motives, because this is a movement that politicized Punjabis who had absolutely no interest, never thought about Punjab. These are youngsters that are born in the diaspora, yet they were at the forefront of the rallies, organizing rallies. Different generations, different types of people, businessmen, civil society organizers, various religious organizations, etc., supported the farmers' movement. So this was an idea, an attempt to understand why, for the first time, here is a movement which was, unlike the Khalistan movement, which was really supported by all Punjabis, irrespective of their background, their location, etc. So that's what the chapter tries to cover. Okay, so I think Gurmukh Singh mentioned the sort of main books that I have published. Okay, so let's just go to the way in which the journey of this research area has unfolded. So we start with looking at, when it comes to Punjab, we start looking at causes of migration. These were the earlier studies, causes of migration. Why is there migration from Punjab? Why are more people migrating from Punjab rather than other areas of India? So the focus was on the sending societies, the political, economic, social conditions in Punjab. So lots of literature came up on causes of migration from Punjab. And then the focus shifted to looking at the effects of that migration on receiving countries. How did these Punjabis settle? What were the difficulties in settlement? What were the consequences for these migrant groups? What challenges did they face? So settlement processes, consequences, that was the second kind of area. And then also that sort of went on to identities as well, but I'll come back to that in a moment. So these are scattered seeds, okay? The classical definition of a diaspora, scattering of seeds. So these are migrant communities, and which then social scientists term as the diaspora, after the sort of pioneering work of Cohen and Robin Cohen. And So then when we're looking at diasporas rather than communities, we sort of also start focusing on other aspects of that migration of the diasporas. Issues of assimilation. Are these migrants going to assimilate? How far will they assimilate into their host countries? Will the migrants adopt Western values, Western culture? Will they shed their cultural luggage? Or how will they accommodate the differences? A lot of talk about how Punjabis fighting for their, and especially Sikhs fighting for their religious symbols. Okay, a lot of literature about that. Then discussions about multiculturalism and how the Punjabis fit into multiculturalism. Then the sort of issue turns towards looking at identities. These Punjabis, migrants, some of them are born, some of them, like me, were child migrants, but some of them are born overseas. What is their identity? Are they British, American, Canadian, or are they Punjabi? And then we move on to actually, they don't have a fixed identity, they have multiple identities. Okay, and also the importance of having a historical memory for your identity. So debates are beginning to now change in terms of how we think about the diaspora. And of course, radical changes happen with the IT revolution, with the internet, the emergence of the internet. So rapid diffusion of technologies, which everybody could get their hands on the mobile phone, is becoming cheaper, readily available. And that led to speeding and deepening of connections, both with the homeland, Punjabis connecting with the homeland, but also of Punjabis with Punjabis settled in other parts of the globe. Okay, so in a way, we see what maybe call the emergence of transnationalism. The new technologies have shrunk time and space. It actually interconnected all the different spaces, regional, the local, regional, national, and global. So people start talking about the death of geography. We live in a borderless world. And that actually leads to heightened connectivity and heightened circulation of people and ideas and goods and services. So now we move from studying migrations to looking at diasporas. So there's the proliferation of research on diasporas. And some of the main themes here, which come out from the literature, a lot of literature looking at different types of diasporas from different countries around the world, that diasporas are getting larger, they're thicker and stronger. They are the human face of globalization. Okay, we're not looking at trade in goods and services, capital flows. These are actually people connections. So they're the human face. There's a rising diaspora consciousness. So, people talk about diaspora consciousness being different from other forms of consciousness. So diasporans are more interested in their roots. Where have we come from? What is our identity? They are beginning to have agency, and they are also organizing themselves in order to achieve whatever maybe they're perceived, against discrimination. Okay, whether it's racial, whether it's religious, etc. So they're organizing, they're mobilizing to protect their identities. So rise in diaspora consciousness, and also homelands. So places like India, Punjab, other states are now revising their opinions of their diasporas. They're seeing them as maybe potential assets. They're stepping up their engagement policies with the diaspora. Okay, they weren't interested in the diaspora before. After all, they left Punjab. So, do we really want to know them? They're not really Indians. But now they're stepping up their engagement efforts. Uh, and also host countries are now noticing that these diaspora groups are actually very assertive. Uh, and within their countries of residence, and diaspora, these governments are worried about whether these diasporas are actually foreign agents. They're here, they're lobbying our politicians. Maybe they're up to no good. Maybe there's a hidden agenda of by these diaspora groups, so that security issue, national security issues coming up to the fore. So there are outbreaks of diaspora phobia. Governments, hostile governments, are getting scared about what these diaspora groups have the capability, have the potential to do. So lots of research on diaspora from every country around the world. But there are problems with the term diaspora, and one of the problems, yes, okay, I have taught courses on global diasporas, so there's always a question about diaspora. What is a diaspora? How do you define a diaspora? So there are so many different types. How do you make sense of diaspora? Why do you always call them diasporas? So there are these methodological issues, but I find it a diaspora still a very useful analytical term or operational term, despite the difficulties. And one of the biggest, in my sort of experience, biggest weakness I find with the concept of diaspora is that when we talk about diasporas, we talk of a diaspora as being very homogenous. Okay? Punjabis in the UK, Punjabis in Canada, Punjabis in Australia, wherever they are living, they're Punjabis. Okay, or whenever they settle, they may have settled last year, they may have settled 20 years ago, 50 years ago. They're the same. So there is this issue of homogeneity among the diaspora. Okay, but in actual effect, diasporas are very heterogeneous. Okay, they're very heterogeneous groups. So at the personal level, we know among the Punjabis, there are differences in religious traditions, beliefs. People come from different areas, Malwa, Doaba, wherever, different class, different caste. So it's a heterogeneous group of people. They have very different personal attributes. There are also structural differences because, some people settled, or some diasporas were formed long time ago. Others were formed only in the last decade, or at the most 2 decades ago. So there are stages of settlement or difference in settlement. So some diasporas are first generation. Most diasporas in, for example, Australia are still first generation. We know Australia has a long history of migration, but I'm talking about the sort of modern diaspora. Italy is the same. So some diasporas are fourth, fifth generation. So you can't say there's a Punjabi diaspora and you're comparing apples and oranges, etc. So that's a limitation of research. So diasporas in reality are very complex, with different lived experiences, and always in transition. Even in the UK today, in England today, we have fresh arrivals of migrants. So gives a new dynamic to the diaspora, and all diasporas are always in transition because there are new additions all the time. So bearing that in mind, I would argue, I've always argued that it's difficult to actually talk about a Punjabi diaspora. In fact, we may have several. There are many Punjabi diasporas. So, for example, some diasporas are well established. UK diaspora, USA, over 100-year history. Canada, also over 100-year history. Some diasporas are relatively new. Australia, yes, migration to Australia started at the end of 19th century, early 20th century, but there was a massive break in between. And the new diaspora really starts in the 1980s and 1990s. Okay, same story with New Zealand. We know New Zealand had Punjabis long time ago, and same with Italy. Most of the Punjabi diaspora in Italy is first generation, relatively new. From 1980s onwards. And there are overlapping generations. Okay, so diasporas are, you can have a country which has got first generation, fifth generation, makes the community very complex and heterogeneous. And of course, given that there is now increased mobility among these diaspora groups, people in Australia, people in the UK, people in USA, Canada, traveling to other diaspora locations. And what we have is the development of transnational families. And so Punjabi families are totally scattered. Okay, in most Punjabi families are now scattered. I know so many families here in England. My own family, my children live in America. We live here, and we are in the process maybe of moving there. But it's, I know so many people, so many Punjabis, boys and girls, whose work is in parts of Europe, mainland Europe. Their parents are elsewhere. So you look at weddings nowadays, you go to a wedding, it's a transnational event, because the relatives are coming from several countries. So it's a truly transnational event. So it's difficult to talk about Punjabi diaspora without mentioning all these limitations of the term. Coming on to diaspora homeland links, traditional way of looking at it is to say, okay, there's a diaspora. Some of the people in diaspora are not interested in the homeland, so it's a passive diaspora. These may be people who are third, fourth, fifth generation. They lost all contact with Punjab. Young, British-born, American, Canadian-born, have no interest in Punjab. They don't have any connections with Punjab. So that is that passive diaspora, but there is also an active diaspora that they do keep connections. And these connections are multi-layered: economic, cultural, political. Okay, so, I can go on to in detail here, but just the 3-4 main ones, economic, so lots of financial exchanges, cultural, and one of the big growth area in culture is film, music, and media. Political is also a major type of connection. Political parties in Punjab always also have overseas chapters, so the connections are always there. But then we also have groups, who are looking for, who are mobilizing or funding ethno-nationalism in Punjab. So that's a different kind of political connection. So this is a traditional way. So we could say that there are actually exchanges going on. So people in the diaspora, there's people movement, there's movement of money, goods, and services. Political ideas are being transferred. Social cultural values are being transferred. So this is a circular transnational exchange, but the focus is on the diaspora and homeland. Okay, so that's the sort of traditional model, if you like, that we started with. So here I have a slide which gives you, looks at the roots. So many different. If if you look at the economic and financial links, political links, social links, cultural, religious links, philanthropic links, there's so many, so many different types of links. And these links are growing all the time. They're getting deeper, they're getting stronger all the time. And some of these links are also becoming more and more circular. Okay, I'll come on to that in a moment. So that's the, if you like, the traditional way. But if we now move to perhaps how thinking is shifting. So traditionally, we thought about connections being one way, from the diaspora to the homeland. Okay, so a lot of research on remittances. In fact, my interest started with work on remittances, how Punjabis were sending money, tractors, etc., to fund the Green Revolution in some of the villages that I studied. That's my initial interest in this area. But remittances are still important. They utilize it. We focus on their utilization more nowadays. Land purchases, machinery, house building, buying of cars and other luxury goods, etc. But then also investments in business, other investment opportunities. And now we're moving towards philanthropy, human rights issues, humanitarian aid issues. So that's the traditional way. But now some of us are saying, well, actually, yes, those links are there, they're important, but we also need to start shifting our focus towards reverse flows from homeland villages to diaspora locations. So lots of money is coming out of Punjab. I know many families who know that their children have no interest in Punjab or the land they may own. They want to sell that land. That money is coming out, or in one way or the other. So reverse flows, we don't focus too much on that. There are also more shifts towards intra-diaspora connections. How Canadians are linking up with the Americans, how Americans are linking with the UK, with the Australians, etc. Intra-diaspora connections, how they are expanding and how they are deepening, not just through marriages, but also in terms of work, business ventures, etc. So there is a shift in orientation. So really, what we are witnessing now is the growing importance of transnationalism. Punjabis, wherever they settle, are connected instantaneously, continuously, dynamically, and intimately to the place of their origin and to relatives and friends in different parts of the globe. It's a very fundamental break, if you like. It's a very different way of thinking from the earlier era on how we talked about thinking about Punjabi migration, Punjabi diaspora. So transnationalism, when we think about transnationalism, it usually involves spread of economic, political, cultural processes across borders. People, movement, cultural changes, technology, etc. So this is due to heightened interconnectivity. And of course, transnationalism can have different dimensions. You can talk about, from an economist point of view, you talk about economic transnationalism. If you're a sociologist, social scientist, you talk about social cultural version of transnationalism. If you're a political scientist, you may talk about political transnationalism. Okay, so there are different dimensions of transnationalism depending on your particular area of interest. Now, of course, what's driving transnationalism is the role of social media. Okay, so it's a social media which whether it's Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, etc., which is really allowing this connectivity, deepening of this connectivity. Social media allows planning, organization, logistics, mobilization, fundraising, the global scale, both within and between diasporas. What I mean here is that social media acts at two levels. One is within the country. So in England, in the UK, the Punjabi community is a lot more connected than before among itself. And also, it's a lot more connected with other Punjabis across the world and with the homeland of Punjab. So it's acting at different levels. And there's a proliferation of Punjabi TV stations. Okay, in the UK now, we have at least 5 or 6 that are operating. There are online newspapers, etc. There are radio stations, major radio stations blowing, offering service in Canada, California, etc. And if you, there are now different ways of looking at the Khalistan movement. There are different ways of looking at the farmers' movement. And that's where, for example, the latest paper that I wrote, I focused on the farmers' movement. So let's just look at the farmers' movement, how transnationalism, how the social media had a critical role to play. So when the movement started, news of the agitation spread across the diaspora locations. So fundraising started straight away. Fundraising that had never been done by people before, even businessmen, truck owners, NGOs, they were all fundraising, okay, to support the movement, providing medical supplies, food supplies, other equipment, fundraising, and then sending it to somebody to act as an intermediary. NGOs came up to support the farmers. So Khalsa Aid, for example, gained popularity because originally it had been working on humanitarian aid, but now it sort of also took up the cause of the farmers. Holding tractor car rallies, there are the tractor car rallies in the USA, in Canada, here in the UK, as gestures of sport. They're mimicking what they're doing in Punjab. Protests outside Indian embassies and consulates, active lobbying. So Punjabi groups are lobbying the British government, lobbying the Congress or Canadian Parliament, Australian Parliament. Resolutions are being passed about support for farmers. So 24/7 discussions on Punjabi media, non-stop discussions on the radio, on the television about what's happening with in the farmers' movement. And in fact, many TV stations, radio operators embed reporters among the protesters in the camps so that they could have up-to-date information of the situation. And many said, the people I talked to, many said that they were willing to return. They want to go back and sit with other farmers in the camps, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it because of the COVID restrictions on travel. So these were the travel, they were still there at that time, 2021. So, widespread support, different generations, people who never even thought about having any link with Punjab are now becoming conscious of what's happening in Punjab. So it's a classic study of how social media and activities of activities using social media can have a powerful impact by a group of people. So under transnationalism, I'm nearly coming to an end now. Under transnationalism, I would say that there is much greater complexity. So understanding it is going to be more difficult. There are widening and deepening connections, and it's bringing out sort of information about new kind of connections. It's exposing connections that we didn't know that existed. Some of these connections are positive in a way, but some can be negative. And so I'll give you an example of the farmers agitation, which united the, for example, communities in their own country, but also united generations. Okay, so each generation is now connecting in order to support the farmers. Musical tours, so music is huge. The musical industry is, you go to a Gurdas Mann or Sataj concert in the UK, it'll be difficult for you to get a ticket, and these tickets aren't cheap, but they're usually oversubscribed. There's a growth in transnational marriages. So transnational marriages occurring in different locations that we did not ever think would happen. But there's also abuse in transnational marriages. There's a growth in transnational crime. We knew something about drugs. We knew the connections, that there was a drug trafficking going on, smuggling going on. But nobody ever, at least I didn't think there were so many gangsters that are actually operating from abroad. They have connection with Punjab, they have connections in Canada, connections in California or USA, they have also connections in the UK. These are transnational gangs. And these are being exposed now. They're underground. We never, and social media transnational expose that. Human trafficking. So we know a lot more cases and the situations in which human trafficking is happening, the exploitation is happening, and another thing with transnationalism, it can give rise to amplify the voice of minority groups, small groups. So here, for example, there are minority groups which are very vocal among some segments of the Khalistan movement and Punjab referendum. So the Amritpal Singh phenomenon would not probably have happened had it not been the kind of interest generated through the social media. So different kind of issues are coming up. It's more complex to understand, but that's the direction in which I think that's the direction in which the research will have to go. So in this sort of slide, what I've tried to do is to capture what I'm talking about. So different diasporas, USA, Canada, UK, Australia, but there are other diasporas as well, and they're now closely becoming interconnected. That connectivity is beginning to grow and will grow over time. So just to finally conclude, I think this process, transnational processes will become deeper. They'll become more and more multi-layered. It'll give rise to much more intra-diaspora dialogue. So UK Sikhs will be talking with Australian Sikhs, with American and Canadian Sikhs. New institutions will come up, new issues will come up. That's the sort of new direction in which I think Punjabi transnationalism will go. So because we are witnessing really the emergence of a truly globalized Punjabi community, not sort of fragments of Punjabi community located in different parts of the world. But more empirical research is needed. So young scholars are urged to do more research in this growing area of transnationalism. Now, that poses a major challenge for homeland governments. Okay, so Punjab will have to engage more, find different and innovative ways of engaging with the Punjabi diaspora. They're not necessarily engaging with one diaspora because there are many Punjabi diasporas. And Punjab government's record is not a good one in terms of engagement. I've written about this before. There is a big trust issue. And India's response is now also very proactive because India has decided that parts of the diaspora, especially Sikh diaspora, are problematic, and they're causing a national security issue, and therefore they're now finding different ways to approach that, to respond to it. But finally, the hostland governments, countries like USA, Canada, UK, will also be under greater pressure from homeland governments, India, for example, to take concerted action against these diaspora groups, especially where they are seen to be causing trouble. You will know about the attack on embassies, consulates, attack on mandars, etc., etc. All of these are very concerning, and so the Indian government finds some kind of national security threat and is engaging with these or putting pressure, if you like, lobbying hostland governments to actually bring about new laws. So lots of things are happening, lots of research to be done, and it's becoming more and more complex, but it's a very interesting area. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Thandi, for such an insightful and informative take on our evolving understanding of terms, concepts, and processes like migration and diaspora, and especially the impact which the fourth industrial revolution, the so-called IT revolution, will have on the trajectory of our understanding about diaspora in the coming decades. And as the world becomes more transnational or global in one sense of the term, and of course this is something that we have been experiencing, but a paradoxical kind of development of this kind of transnationalization of the world has been that people are becoming more rigid about their identities, ethnic identities, regional identities, religious identities, and national identities. So in a sense, this complex world historical process raises all kinds of complex and serious questions that need to be examined by the young research scholars. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
So I would now request our guest of honor, Professor Harish K. Puriji, to share his observations on today's lecture and transnationalism.
Well, this has been absolutely delightful, Professor Shinder Thandi.
Thank you.
It's almost like opening a new world of multi-dimensional, multi-layered kind of changes and such tremendous complexity of understanding the diaspora. You have touched practically all dimensions. In a sense, what you use the word negative and positive. And how transnationalism is changing our ways of looking at things, ways of understanding things, ways of behaving. Such kind of basic conceptual changes are coming because of the kind of interconnectivity, the coming of this technology, artificial intelligence in particular. And in future, actually, it's rather difficult to anticipate, to predict in what directions things will go. Let me first of all, thank the Center for Diaspora Studies, Professor Gurmukh Singh and Dharamjit Singh, for inviting me. I am not a scholar of diaspora studies. I had interest, and Darshan Singh was a dear close friend and a great scholar. And I remember that, I used to use the word Punjabi word darvesh, very unassuming and absolutely soft-spoken, a very deep scholar. And as he himself told Professor Gurmukh Singh, there were, of course, different points of view. And I tell you, disagreeing with him was never a difficult task. And there was no fear in the mind that the man would take it ill, that he would mind it. And he knew as much that there were, of course, different ways of looking at things. And we had, great understanding of each other's ways of looking at things. He had deep convictions about his own ways. Did not change ideas through discussion alone. And perhaps we would agree to disagree on several points. But this was great knowing him and great working with him on one project. At least we were together. And I think, we even shared the emotions about our own people, the people who go abroad, and the kind of problems they face. Jinu Punjabi ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੰਵੇਦਨਾ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਨਾ, the feeling under the skin of the other person. And it was possible thereby for both of us to exchange our notes. I am, Professor Thandi, I'm very deeply impressed by the range and the variety of and the dimensions you touched concerning the kind of changes which are coming in the lives of diaspora and in the way the scholars are approaching the subject to understand this multi-layered, complex kind of reality. And I'm glad actually you touched upon this, that actually there's a considerable amount of heterogeneity. I mean, you can't use the word diaspora as something very homogeneous. And the varieties over time increasing. And I don't have much to actually add. This. I'm actually, when we talk of their impact, the kind of changes coming, how they impact the homeland connection. I was thinking you referred to the farmers' agitation and the tremendously important role played by the diaspora in that agitation. And I think precisely if they could sustain the movement for such a long time, a major credit definitely goes to Punjabi diaspora. And this was one movement over a long period in which Punjabis of all varieties, different class people, different caste people, urbanites, ruralites, such an emotional, bond reflected here. I hope we could sustain it. There's an apprehension in mind that it is becoming difficult. I was thinking of one thing more. Tremendous changes are coming in our societies and all over the world in the field of, let us say, politics. All over the world, we are seeing a decline for respect of democratic institutions. It's happening practically all over the world. Almost uncontested sway of corporatization of economies and almost accepting as normal, becoming almost banal, that the governments are going to the multinational corporations and their influence. And it comes to my mind, how do our people of diaspora at different levels responding to or reacting to the kind of changes coming in this political domain, whether we think of Turkey or Italy or other countries. In India in particular, when we see here Hindu majoritarianism, for example, the way it has been propagated, and a certain kind of a vulgarity, where mobs, the police could just give up before the mobs, and the mobs are allowed to take away women, take away their clothes, and let them be raped again. Now, when such kind of things are happening, on the other side, we have, for example, things like, when you make a study of, let's say, our legislators, members of parliament and members of legislative assemblies, all studies reveal that practically 45% of all MPs and MLAs have a criminal record. And several of them have charges of murder, charges of rape, attempt to murder, but very, very serious kind of things. My question that comes to my mind is that here in India, there is much compulsion perhaps to be a little more silent, because the price of even making a comment is getting heavy. In the Ashoka University just a day before, one professor had to resign because he had written an article talking about how we are making compromises in the way our democracy is being run. And the management council asked him to give up. What's happening? Now, since the diaspora people are far more exposed to these kind of pressures, and I expect them to be a little more exposed to liberal thinking and liberal democratic ideas in America and Canada, and the practice in living in Britain, when you see the kind of convention that a minister of finance sends an email wrongly under her own private address, and the moment it's known, she had to resign. And here you have murders and total chaos, and just nobody seems to be responsible. Now, it comes to my mind, those people who are like Professor Thandi, in England, and exposed to the kind of conventions, the kind of respect for institutions, how would they react to what's happening in India? Do they or do they not? And if they do, can they really, do they really help to encourage the people in India have a little more hope, a little more sense of audacity to challenge this kind of governments? I have, it sometimes comes to my mind that, confronting such kind of problems is becoming a little difficult even for diaspora. And perhaps it seems to me, I would like to be corrected, that when there is one section which would react like those who talk about Khalistan in anger. as protest. Punjabis have been known for what is called Navari, resistance against all kinds of oppression. But large sections of diaspora are almost forced to be silent, intellectuals in particular. Now, when they grow silent, what do they do then? It seems to me that the escape mechanism goes towards building thinking of our separate identity, religious identity, Sikhi, for example. The approach to building solidarity among the diaspora seems to be by religion. More and more emphasis on ritual, religious ritual, religious form, not religious teaching. ਜਿਹੜੀ ਭਾਵਨਾ ਹੈ ਧਰਮ ਦੀ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਾਹਰਲਾ ਇੱਕ ਰੂਪ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ emphasis ਬਹੁਤ. Now it seems to me that all over, when I look at different kind of countries, that it seems to be an escape mechanism, that you focus more, devote more time towards building your separate, distinct identity. Surely this also leads to something very good. Khalsa Aid, for example, all over the world, the kind of langars organized in all situations of distress, getting great reputation all over the world, and also interconnecting. Through transnational kind of conversations, you are getting things done. Positive also. But it seems to me that greater degree of emphasis on your religious dimension of identity. I don't know whether it works towards integration or it tends to create fissures which tend to separate and divide. And surely Professor Thandi has talked about the heterogeneity that within the community we know about caste factor. You have separate gurdwaras and sometimes even contempt in behavior against the others. And I was found that there are studies, for example, I was reading Navjot Pal Kaur's, study of the fresh Punjabi students have gone to Canada. She conducted a study of those students, and she found that there was some kind of desire to stress upon their separate Jat identity. Talking of their quantity of land they own back home. And she also found that in cases where the students could not refer back to the ownership of land, they were thinking of some other strategies to emphasize their superiority. Masculinity. Masculinity has been a very significant, aspect of studies in diaspora by all kinds of scholars. Now, I also connected with another. It seems to me, once again, I would like to be corrected. And in any case, I would like all of us to think about it. That whenever we think of, the hegemonic dimension of your superiority, your ego, your Vice Chancellor talked about the deconstruction of whatever terminology we use and the conception we have in mind. That the more we think in terms of being exceptional, exceptionalism, the Hindu exceptionalism in India. They are not only a majority, they have such a great past where you had, all kinds of scientific development in the past, and we are a bishop guru, and you refuse to see the extent of equity, the extent of injustice done, the tremendous inequality. That when you have this kind of a feeling of exceptionalism, it seems to me diaspora, because of the heterogeneity, there is an effort to consolidate. And the consolidation has to be through religious idiom. And thereby, the idea of being distinctly masculine, superior, it may go well with the present day economy, corporatization, growth, more profit over people, what Chomsky said. It seems to me there is a connection between this idea of caste superiority or religious superiority, the distinction, we are different and we are superior to the others. This is happening in India. We are witness to whatever is happening and the kind of divisiveness it has created. And I would imagine that the diaspora being more exposed to the working of democracy, liberalism, and multiculturalism, variety of religions, and the variety of practices of democracy, that they would be even far more sensitive about whatever is happening in India than many of the Indians could be. But do we see that? And if not, it seems to me that there is almost an approval of the so-called corporate capitalist method of development, which in any case creates tremendous inequalities and injustices. And an escape mechanism would be that you are in your own small world of diaspora, you are exceptional, you are superior. There is another question in my mind that whenever we talk of Punjabiyat, I am sure in your own writings you have examined this, and that the question has been repeatedly raised, that what is how do we distinguish between Sikhi and Punjabiyat? Now, when we use the word Punjabi, actually, what comes to my mind is that Punjabiyat covers a very vast expanse. More than 60% of Punjabis actually live in Pakistan. And Punjabis are not only Sikhs, but non-Sikhs also. Surely, I think I saw your writing somewhere. The assumption is that the Pakistani Punjabis perhaps view themselves more as Muslims, more as Pakistani, rather than Punjabis, that their regional identity is not so important. I remember there was an interview, Swaraj Beer conducted an interview with Ishtiyaq Ahmed. And this was a question raised about the Pakistani Punjabis. And he very categorically jumped at it and said, whenever can somebody tell the Punjabis that you are Urdu-speaking Punjabis? He said, they will feel enraged, angry about it. And he said, I have not seen a single Punjabi, Pakistani, who was not proud of his being Punjabi. So when we talk about Punjabi, we need to be considerate. the concept of Punjabiyat or Punjabi diaspora cannot be used appropriately if we are discussing only the Sikhs. We'll have to go beyond it and also see that, outside, when we have interconnections between Punjabi diaspora living in Australia, in New Zealand, in Turkey, and Denmark, there are interconnections in Europe. What is the situation of Punjabi diaspora and its relationship with the non-Punjabi diaspora in England, in Canada, in America? What kind of a dialogue is there? Do we see the challenges? We have seen our Prime Minister going to America and to other countries, and the kind of crowds shouting. Do they really click well with the Punjabis? How do we negotiate with them? Or can we ignore them? Diaspora has a problem of this also. We will have to negotiate. We'll have to find ways of connecting with that media, that diaspora also. And that has a great influence. In Leicester, you saw what happened in Leicester. This kind of things are happening in diaspora. And Punjabi diaspora cannot really be in a cocoon of their own separate world. They'll have to deal with, and the transnationalism of today, certainly we expect that. There was such kind of questions coming to my mind, I thought I should share with you. But let me tell you that it's like opening of my mind. Your lecture and the dimensions you touched. And I'm absolutely grateful to you and to the organizers, Professor Gurmukh Singh and Dharamjit Singh, the Center for Diaspora Studies. I never expected that somebody would invite me for this kind of a function. And I'll have the privilege of listening to Professor Thandi. And this was absolutely delightful. And it's a great pleasure. And I wish I listen to you more and more and read more and more of your articles. I have already consulted some. I have been a reader of quite a few others. I know Anjali Gera Roy also wrote in and talked about, coming of tribalism in the global situation. You're focused upon the jobs. And particularly, this Navjot Pal course, the whole idea of not only making choices, but also othering. Within Punjabi diaspora, you have lots of othering, exclusions. How do we deal with it? Of course, our function is only to study, we are not activists. But I think no Punjabi can be simply an indifferent kind of a scholar studying this. It's a question which touches us, and we have to think about how to deal with it. That this kind of othering about caste in particular in this 21st century, the manner in which is going. When we talk of Sikh identity and solidarity, can we totally rule out this kind of discrimination? That if you are not a true Sikh, if you have this kind of discrimination, exclusion, and contempt, this is not accepted. But still, you can't, because there's a heterogeneity and we have to accept that. And there's all the variety. Thank you very much indeed. And Professor Thandi, I'm beholden to you. Very delighted. and very thankful to the Center for Diaspora Studies. This has been my pleasure. You made my day. Thank you very much indeed.
ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੁਰੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਗਹਿਰੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਦਿਲ ਤੋਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹੀ ਸੁਣਨਾ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਸੁਣਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਵੈਸੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੁੱਖ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਦਾ ਭਾਸ਼ਣ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਕੋਈ ਡਾਇਲੌਗ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਨਕਲੂਜਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਮਨ 'ਚ ਖਿਆਲ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਉਠਾਏ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਸ਼ਿੰਦਰ ਥਾਂਦੀ ਕੁਝ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹਣ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ
ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ
ਤੇ ਬੜਾ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋਵਾਂਗਾ ਤੇ
no
ਆਈਡੀਆ ਮੇਰਾ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਮੇਰਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ
ਉਹ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਹਾਂ
I am grappling with these things so these things disturb him also as much and since we share ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਤਾਤਲਾ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ we shared emotions also not merely information not merely whatever research was there but at the emotional level there was a respect for each other and despite differences on our ways of looking at things.
Yes.
So I didn't expect Professor Shinder to respond to what I said. My idea was that all of us, in your center in particular, will be dealing with raising such questions in mind. And this is what your Vice Chancellor said, you know, deconstruction. That whatever terms we are using, let us see whether these are appropriate. What is the other way of looking at things? There is another dimension, something which is unsaid.